Hello and welcome to this social science short. My name is Professor Louise Waite. I'm the director of Leeds Social Sciences Institute, and we do lots of great things at LSSI, but one of the things we focus on is thinking about how to promote and how to advance the impact of the research amongst social scientists at the University of Leeds. So it's with this in mind that I'm thrilled that our guest has come along today to discuss her research. So I'd like to introduce you to Gehan Selim. Gehan is a professor of architecture in the School of Civil Engineering here at the University of Leeds. Let me begin then with a question. I asked you to bring along an object that links to your research, that provides a bit of a kind of hook which to start telling us about your research. Can we kick off with that then, please?
Yeah, thank you very much, Louise, and thanks for inviting me to take part. It's a pleasure to be here, actually. I brought those two objects here, if I come closer to my camera. Those two pieces of artwork are co-produced by young artists and community members in Umm Qais, which is a very unique place in the north of Jordan. The area is the site of distinctive archaeology, remains since the Roman time, and it was added to the UNESCO World Heritage List in 2001. These two pieces are significant outcome of 3 years of utilizing participatory action research to engage with young communities and to celebrate efforts in the global south on cultural heritage protection in general, in the context of Umm Qais, which is the site of this project that I will be talking about in a minute. This work was part of the project titled the Living Museum of Umm Qais project that received funding from the Arts and Humanities Research Council in 2019, and it's also supported by the Newton Fund collaboratively. The project is led by myself and a huge interdisciplinary team from Leeds and from outside of Leeds, and a large academic and non-academic participants from the UK and Jordan equally. This work, we sought to explore how digital interfaces and multimedia platforms are used to transform perception of young people, of local communities in Jordan, into a more active agent in the construction of collective memory. We sought to use digital heritage tools to reconnect displaced communities to their former villages and places and living places and the larger heritage values that are present there. We also aim to understand how the youth participation in the co-creation of digital content, social documentation is changing practices of collective remembrance. First of all, how are digital platforms reshaping cultural heritage and its usage? And the second is, what implications do such platforms and practices have on memory construction in a digital landscape? We basically established a strategy for digital recording and documentation that integrated links of habitation and tradition across eras. And I'm talking about a series of eras from the ancient to the medieval until the present day. The central argument we had was made is that digital technologies had the potential to alter the cultural heritage industry. For example, it is now possible for the public to actively produce material for heritage collections through digital platforms, but also it is essential to understand how participatory media may play a role in the construction of collective memory.
So may I ask a kind of follow-on question then, Gehan, and that's really about during the research, were there any sort of particular challenges that you encountered or any particular aspects of the project that became kind of more important as you moved through the work?
Yes, we did have a lot of challenges on different levels, but let me focus on the most important challenge, and this probably pushed us a little bit to change some aspects of the agenda of the project, and maybe one of our main stakeholders, which is working with the youth community in the site. I will just turn around the question to ask another question, is that why young people matter? And that was the key driving for our agenda in that work since 2019. And I would just say they matter because they represent over a fifth of the world's population. So, for example, the recent data from the British Council Next Generation Global Research highlighted two critical areas of concern for young people. The first one was on the education level, where they feel that the quality of education is lacking and does not prepare youth for employment. Second one was the availability of decent work, whereas unemployment is rapidly growing due to dropping rates of economic growth, with young people mostly hit by this. Through the project, we wanted to understand how creatively young people people could engage with notions and processes of change, empowerment, and development. So the work involved two levels of investigation. First, that we wanted to revitalize the community's sense of place and interest in their heritage, and in doing so, to support sustainable heritage approaches that benefit the local community and ensure its protection. The second level, we wanted to reconstruct a sense of the everyday cultural heritage that once linked the local community with their heritage. So it's a kind of sense of engagement and awareness. We've been bringing local family members back to their old houses and interviewing them on the site. And this has been of great assistance in terms of connecting historical, social, and cultural aspects of their memories to the realities of the place and how it operates at the moment.
So can you just tell us a little bit about the actual activities that you did through the project as well?
Right. So we had levels of activities and part of that was the digital documentation and recording of the site using digital technologies like virtual reality and augmented reality, and creating the first of its kind database of this kind of recording and documentation, which hopefully we hope that it could be part of the documentation and application for the UNESCO when it goes for being more of outside of the tentative list. We had different activities, first of all, like mapping historical research and archaeological and spatial layout of the site. So we used the surveys of research data, archaeological evidence, and generated scanned models of the site to produce a credible layout of the historic site that documents and records for the first time the structures of the buildings, the layout, the infrastructure, including overlaying archaeology and spatial data, imaging of the site, and customized ArcGIS software to demonstrate chronological transformation of the site across the years. We developed an integrated visual database of environments that incorporated research, archived data, and surveyed datasets to offer 3D interactive environments. And all this is supported by infographics and digitized archaeological databases to inform the sustainable conservation on the long term of the site and make the scientific and archaeological data more accessible to public and for non-specialist users. And basically, a lot of museums now, we're collaborating with a lot of museums in Jordan who will be starting to use this free access kind of information and data we generated for a permanent display in the museum. We also delivered capacity building and training workshops on data gathering techniques targeted to the local community, heritage professionals, and the local young people. And the training included aspects of how to run spatial surveys, for example, record social and cultural narratives and oral histories, and use analytical processes to untangle the complicated histories. So the work heavily relied on the production of online content that helped us to develop a website that now hosts the digital archive of Umm Qais, and including interactive VR environments, 360 visualizations, drone imaging, interviews, short films, developing digital story maps, and more than that.
That's a lot. Obviously quite a multi-phased kind of approach to your activities and lots of different scales.
Right, and just to add, the link to the website is www.ummuheritageqais.com. So all the content is there, free access, and please enjoy watching it.
Wonderful. Yeah, well, that really shows, the kind of impact and the dissemination potential of this project as well. So could you just tell us a bit more about, what you feel now the youth community really have learned from involvement in the project?
Our main idea was for the youth community to learn through heritage, and this was our slogan actually across the project, learning through heritage and enhancing the youth engagement with their heritage and their history. So the methodology we implemented enabled the youth people in the site to go beyond the collective memory and become more analytical on the basis of their identities that they already hold. Because for a long time, and because of displacement 50 years ago, they became disconnected. So the main question and the main thread is how to bring them back to that memory. So even if they didn't live that time of the displaced events, but how can we bring them back to engage in a more active way? First of all, they captured the young people's interest and imagination and allowed visualizing narratives of buildings or sites using new media for the first time for them. It also enabled moving in the virtual representation of historical sites to seek sources of evidence that allowed them to make conclusions on the basis of evidence. So making their own judgments and build their own conclusions and realize which inquiry process or historical concept they are working on. They also learned from non-symbolic first group experience, where they were encouraged and required to collaborate and provide a social atmosphere for the first time. The focus was how can communities with diverse historical backgrounds and influences on modern history work and integrate and collaborate and co-produce knowledge for the first time. And the focus was not simply on reading factual information, but it was about the history and the culture, but was also to look around them and move from place to another and to question preconceptions of the young people who are able to construct the narratives of the future through their own understanding and opinions from the evidence of different influences. So it's not about the histories and the stories that they hear from their families and they read from books, but actually they have a positive position on developing a narrative for the future and hence being able to conserve and protect those sites and that heritage.
So thank you very much, Gehan, for joining us today. I look forward to many more conversations with you about your work as we move forward. Thank you very much then. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks, Louise. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.